Welcome to the last video of week 1. In this video you will learn about how to assess indoor environmental quality. Moreover, which indicators there are available for that. The health and comfort indicators we are today familiar with can be divided in 3 groups of indicators. The indicators using the dose or environmental parameter, such as concentrations of certain pollutants, temperature level or ventilation rate. The ones focused on the occupant, such as sick leave, productivity, a number of symptoms or complaints. And indicators concerned with buildings and its components, such as certain measures or characteristics of a building and its components, or even labeling of buildings and its components. Of these groups of indicators, the first one, dose or environment parameter related indicators, is used most frequently in guidelines and standards. But the mechanisms used behind these values or ranges are not always that clear. Take for example the minimum ventilation rate based on either CO2, carbon dioxide, as an indicator for bioeffluence or on certain emissions of building materials. Minimum ventilation rates have been discussed and are still being discussed for almost 200 years now. We have no clue what to take. So let's have a look at the other 2 groups of indicators we have available: the occupant-related indicators and building-related indicators. The occupant-related indicators comprise of indicators related directly to the occupant, such as symptoms and complaints. The number and type of symptoms and/or complaints from occupants of a building administered via a questionnaire has been the most applied method to inventory the health and comfort status of an occupant in a building. Questions related to symptoms, such as for example shown here, can be used to calculate the percentage of occupants with a certain symptom, or even the number of symptoms per occupant defined as the building symptom index. But people have also been directly asked how they experience their environment by, for example, mood profiling developed by Peter de Smet, a professor at industrial design, or by a question such as this one: how acceptable is the air you perceive? With the answers, the percentage of dissatisfied or acceptability percentage of a group of people can be calculated. The latter type of questioning is, for example, also used in lab studies, where panels of persons have been used to evaluate air quality, for example from an air filter as is shown here, to get an idea of how a single component is performing. That brings us to productivity. Productivity has been and can be measured in different ways. Objectively, by for example measuring the speed of working and the accuracy of outputs by designing very controlled experiments with well-focused tests. Subjectively, by using self-estimated scales and questionnaires to assess the individual opinions of people concerning their work and environment. And also with combined measures, using for example some physiological measures such as brain rhythms to see whether variations in the patterns of the brain responses correlate with the responses assessed by questionnaires. This figure here shows an increased blood flow when a man is finding his way in a visual environment, as an example of an experiment using combined measures. Other physiological or physical indicators are also thinkable. Indicators that give us information on changes in physics or behavior, for example of breathing, allergic reaction and blood pressure. Changes in our bodily products, such as breath, urine, blood and saliva, of certain hormones or other compounds that are more or less present, for example cortisol, an anti-stress hormone we produce when exposed to stress situations. And then changes in the brain, monitored for example with a precision emission tomography scan, so-called PET scan, has been used. And changes at cell level, with techniques such as gene profiling, are also showing potential as an indicator to be used. Then let's look at the group of building-related indicators. Also with respect to building-related indicators, we haven't sit still. Two types of building-related indicators can be distinguished. Labels of some kind to compare buildings or components, and examples of good practice. While energy labels are getting more and more effect, pushed by regulation via the Energy Performance Directive of buildings, labeling or evaluating buildings on its health and comfort effect is still very much a voluntary event. Even though the market offers us now several evaluation tools, such as BREEAM in the UK, LEED in the USA and CASBEE in Japan, it's still not common to apply these tools. Driven by the fact that also these tools are mostly focused on sustainability and not on health and comfort of occupants in the buildings, the recently introduced WELL standards, which does include health and comfort in their assessment, is beginning to win ground. Then we have collected many examples of good practice over the years for which potential problems have been established, expressed in, for example, checklists that can be applied during inspection of a building. And based on experience, we have established a relation schemes that can help us to identify potential risks of the measures we take to tackle a problem, trying to prevent us from creating new problems. To summarize, we have three groups of health and comfort indicators available to assess indoor environmental quality. The dose-related indicators, mostly used in standards and guidelines, which can be measured in the environment of the subject with environmental monitoring techniques, for example, monitoring the temperature. The occupant-related indicators, which can be assessed through questionnaires, observations and interviews, and or monitoring physiological and physical changes in the body or the bodily products. And then the building-related indicators, which can be assessed through examples of good practice, such as checklists and or labeling of buildings and or products.